Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Jewish Gen Talk. We're so glad that you're with us. We have people from around the world who have registered to learn more about research in Belarus and being able to search archives. We'll get started momentarily. Please post in the chat where you're logging in from, and we will get started momentarily. So we have David from Phoenix, Avram Kraus, nice to see you, from Israel. And we have Rita in New York, Nancy in Jersey City, Barry Finkel in Chicago, a regular attendee, Ilana Green in Victoria, British Columbia, Jerry Ann Carlsberg, Dr. Jerry Ann from San Diego, so glad that you're with us. Alan Moskowitz, see someone from snowy Markham, Ontario, Elona from Jerusalem, so glad that you're with us. Jerry Arbach is here with us. And David Levine from Seattle and Sarah Weil from Jerusalem, always attending. Thank you so much for being with us each week. Yehudit from Israel, Sandy from New Hampshire. Thanks for everyone who's logging in and posting in the chat where you're from. We have Ellen Weinstein from Oswego, Illinois, if I pronounced that properly. Steve Sine, who's president of the JGS of New York, is with us. Thanks for being here. And we have Gail from Charlotte, North Carolina, and Nimrod from Israel, and Yonatan Kirsch from Beit Shemesh in Israel. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Avram Grohl. I am the Vice President for Jewish Gen at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. We are based in Lower Manhattan in New York City. If you imagine where the Statue of Liberty is, we are right across the water from that statue. And if you have not been to the museum recently, I hope the next time you are in the New York area, you will make an effort to visit. Today's webinar, we are joined by Deborah Brunner, Carl Kaplan, and Vasily Zaitsev. We have Deborah from London, Carl from Boston, and Vasily in Minsk. And of course, I'm in New York. So we have an international program and panel today, and we're so glad that you're with us. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. The session is being recorded, so you're welcome to take notes, but we will send out the recording afterwards. If you have any questions, our panelists have graciously agreed to answer them. Please post your questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. I'm not going to go through the chat at the end. It will only be coming from the Q&A, and please keep your questions general and broad in nature. It won't be an opportunity for us to go into specific research or personal research questions. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Deborah Brunner, someone I've known for a few years already, and we've worked together on a few different things and tried to partner together. And so we really are very grateful that you've been willing to join us for this week's Jewish Gen Talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And as Avram said, I'm in the UK. I'm the co-founder of the Together Plan, a non-profit based in the UK. And Carl Kaplan is my colleague who is based in Boston. You'll be hearing from him next. And then he'll be handing over to Vasily, who is in Minsk. So we are truly international. So let's go to the first slide. So this is just a little teaser. I'm not really going to tell you much more. It is something that we are able to produce when we do our ancestry research for people. And then I'm going to park it there. And Carl and Vasily are going to tell you a little bit more. So it's just, as I said, a little teaser. So next slide. So at the Together Plan, we offer, as it says, a fully custom or bespoke professional archive service with a dedicated team of experienced archivists who are based in Belarus. And the Together Plan employs our archives team there. We work directly with the archives, and many of the team are former archives employees with years of experience. And additionally, the team is able to leverage their relationships as new archives become available, which is a great bonus. Next slide, please. So just some important points. We are a non-profit. We have over 100 clients, active clients. Our archive services have been running for 4 years now. We are headquartered in London. We have 14 people working in this team in Belarus. We are heavily involved in the community in Belarus, and Artur Lifshitz, who is my co-founder of the Together Plan, is also the chairman of the Jewish Religious Union in Belarus. We have great connections in the region in Lithuania, so when we need to get into archives there, that's totally doable. And we're a very unique organization. We have diverse missions, we have diverse peoples, and we go to diverse places. So, next slide. We also have a sister nonprofit in the United States called Jewish Tapestry Project, and Jewish Tapestry Project is the Together Plan in the United States. It just has a different name, but as you can see, it has the same logo. Next slide, please. So the Together Plan as an organisation does many things, as well as archive services. We connect Jewish people all over the world to their ancestry. We are building a Jewish cultural heritage route in Belarus, which is a citizen-led civil society initiative. So we work very closely to the communities in Belarus and to people on the ground. We are educating by bringing the story of the Soviet Jews killed in the Holocaust into focus with our Holocaust education program. We're translating and publishing books that would otherwise have been lost and forgotten. We engage young adults into our youth heritage projects. We send humanitarian aid to Belarus from London, and we are supporting community growth within Belarus. Next slide, please. Just a mention to our most significant and very important project that we're working on at the moment. We are working to build a memorial, a very significant memorial, and you can see at the bottom on the right an artist's illustration of what that memorial will look like at the site of the Brest-Litovsk Jewish Cemetery, otherwise known as Brisk. We've created a catalogue of over 1,200 salvaged, reclaimed gravestones that once stood in the cemetery, and that project is on our website, and we're social mediaing about that a lot at the moment. Next slide, please. Just to say, this is these are the images of the construction site as it is at the moment, and we're hoping to build that and have it finished by the summer with an opening planned for July. And we've got a last push fundraising event going on at the moment, but we're doing really well, and we are, as you can see, this is a little bit of drone footage, and even though you're not allowed to fly drones in Belarus, we were given permission by the Ministry of Defense to get those images. So we're now sharing those with you here. So yes, next slide, please. We are also a member of an organisation called the AEPJ, the European Association for the Preservation and Promotion of Jewish Heritage and Culture, and they are the organisation that is building the European route of Jewish heritage, which is one of the cultural routes of the Council of Europe, and our role in that is to work on the route in Belarus. Next slide, please. And just to sort of conclude my part of this introduction, as part of our work, when we do searches for people, we always try and ask them if they've got they want to share their family story so that we can write an article for our newsletter, and we ask them for recipes. And here is a great success story of Carl's Forschmack family recipe from Minsk that he shared with us and is on our website. So if you've got any good recipes, let us know. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Carl, who's going to take you on the next part of the journey.
Thank you so much, Deborah, and also Rabbi Grohl and Jewish Gen. So for the next 15 or so minutes, as both a client and a caseworker, I want to show you what's possible when you engage with the Together Plan, and then hand it off to Vasily, who is on the ground with our Minsk team, to show you in more detail how everything works. So the Together Plan has various roles. We've tried to be quite strict about how we put ourselves together so it's very consistent. I am a caseworker. We also have an archive services manager. She's located in London. Her name is Jillian. The archives coordinator, in this case, Vasily, who will be presenting, and the archivists themselves, who are physically going into the archives in Grodno, in Minsk, and many other regional archives. So in detail, this is really important because if you sign up with us to do a search, you will be working directly with a caseworker, pretty much the most important connection. We're your point of contact. We will guide you through the process. We're going to take all of your questions and get them answered either by ourselves or by our team in Belarus. When we do execute a search, first we're going to give you a quote, and then we're going to follow through with an invoice, and you'll be paying there. We're going to keep you up to date with progress. It does take time, and Vasily will go through that. And we can check in with Minsk whenever needed to get an update. We don't want to just disappear and then reappear when we have your search finished. Now, people often ask, why should I use a professional archivist? So for people like me, who my mother's side was from Austria-Hungary, I was able to do pretty much everything I needed to do online because the records are there. Unfortunately, as many of you know, only a small percentage of records in Belarus have been put online. Most have not. Now, through the absolute amazing work of JewishGen and other sites like Miriam Weiner, who I know is on the call with Routes to Roots, there's a percentage of them, but for the most part, they have never been put online. So the only other way to do it is to do it yourself, which is going to require you to fly and go to Belarus, which is pretty much impossible right now. Maybe a few people do it. You're going to have to become fluent not only in Belarusian, not only Russian, but also Old Russian, the language of these records, get access to the archives, which is not automatic, figure out where everything is located, figure out where your family is registered, and then this becomes key, and we'll get into that. And then for most of the year, you have to like snow. So it's not really the most feasible situation for anybody who's looking to find out more about family from what is now Belarus. Now, when you look at the Together plan, because there are other archivists, we just want you to know that we have a trusted team of experts on the ground, including Vasily. So it really helps with us gaining access to archives all over Belarus. As Deborah outlined, we support a number of charitable aspects to the Jewish community in Belarus, along with the memorial we're now building. We have a lot of testimonials, I being one of them. We have some others we'll mention. There's more on the site. We're very, very careful about privacy, something that's really important. And at first glance, maybe people might not think so, but we'll talk about phase 1 and phase 2. But with phase 2, you get the scans. We don't charge extra, you get them. And I'll give a little bit of insight about why that was important for me. And then we also have a very strict process. If any of you know of software called Salesforce, we use that to track our cases and to know at any given time where the cases are. We have a monthly archives meeting. We had one yesterday, and it gives the whole team in Belarus and London and wherever the caseworkers are to discuss anything that's important, along with cases that might need a little bit more attention. Results, what everybody wants to know. Fortunately or unfortunately, it has to do with luck. If the records are there, that's great. But if they're not there, you won't be able to find them. On my father's side, the Kaplan side from Minsk, I have been incredibly lucky and can't believe how much I've found. On my grandmother's side, in what is now Lithuania, I have found nothing. And I've engaged with the archivists, they're just not there. So there is some aspect of that. But to give you an idea, 70% of our phase 1, which is really just intended to find out if the records are there. We don't want to charge you for a full search and then after we do it, say, hey, there's nothing there. So phase 1 is really to get an idea, is it worth doing a full search? About 70% of the time, it is worth it. And for phase 2, the full search, about 70% of the time, we yield very good results. Obviously, it's different for everybody, but we do want you to know that. As I mentioned before, we're very process oriented. You can see we have a procedures document. That is Salesforce. We have a dashboard. We have these monthly archive meetings where we meet and talk about the situations we're dealing with. People ask about payment. When we're dealing with the archives, we're only dealing with the Together plan. Even though Jewish Tapestry Project is in the US, for financial reasons, we go through our Together plan in London. Now, as far as payment, we do it online. We started by having to do it with checks and sister organizations, but right now you can just pay online. I do it. The quote will be in British pounds. I pay it because as I've done many searches, and then your credit card company figures out how many dollars it is, but you can look it up to get an idea. As you can see, again, it's by credit card online, so it's fairly easy. Now, everything starts with our archive inquiry form. It will be posted, the link will be posted, and we can also send it to people. This is where everything starts. So you put your information in, then you start putting in what you're looking for. What do you know about your family? And then you can attach relevant documents. A lot of people, they have this death certificate, they have this, they have that. It's really important to get that information in. If you find more after you've submitted it, you can add that information. It is free. I cannot emphasize how important it is to fill out the form, because you don't have to pay anything, because when you fill out the form, then you get put on the waiting list. Right now, the waiting list is about 1 or 2 months. It's quite possible if I do my job here and people are interested, the waiting list will go up. So I emphasize in person whenever I meet somebody over and over again that it's free to fill out the inquiry form. So by doing it, you get on the waiting list. Another thing I want to point out is we deal with the archives, not what I call genealogy. So if people ask, hey, I think my great-grandfather had a cousin in Philadelphia, that's a great search. And JewishGen has lots of tools for that. That is not something that we engage in. We engage more going into the archives, finding the appropriate documents, as you'll see ahead. One thing to know, yes, today Belarus has borders, but we all know from watching many presentations that borders change. As a result, you might have some records that are not in Belarus, but they were in Belarus. And so we can reach out. We certainly have connections with Lithuania, with Poland, if it's one of those kind of blurry areas. And, and if somebody sends a request that really has nothing to do with Belarus, we'll let you know that too. So we try to give you and really try to help you find what you're looking for. Now, client stories and testimonials are very important, and I will highlight mine for the basic reason that it's very easy for me to give myself permission because we maintain privacy. I found out about the Together plan basically by asking a question on the JewishGen discussion group, and I've been so successful that I'm a volunteer. So I had a paper family tree from the 90s. The people in yellow are kind of what I knew about my family. And all I knew is my grandfather really came in 1913 from Minsk, and that was pretty much it. This is what I got. Deborah showed it at the beginning. With my phase 2, they were able to build this, we call it an ancestral pathway. It's a little different than a family tree, but notice it went all the way back to my 6th great grandfather, Itzka, in the 1740s. Now, I don't know about you, but I was raised on the premise that there's nobody left in Eastern Europe and there's no records left, so don't even look. And here I am finding almost 300 years of family history. The other thing I will point out is I found out that, yes, they were in Minsk in the 1880s and forward. Before that, they actually came from Uzda. And so there's some questions about registration that only a skilled archivist can help you with. Vasily will talk about that. Now, I think some of you may know that Jews in the Russian Empire got their surnames generally in 1804. My family are Kohanim and thus Kaplan. But what that means is my 5th great grandfather, Liba Itzkovich Kaplan, he was the first person to get that surname of Kaplan. I'm looking at, and you can see this is the entry in the census. I don't read Russian. I know how to read Kaplan now, but I'm looking at the first Kaplan in my family, which was, I don't know, very emotional for me. Another thing that came out of this was this famous Usher Kaplan, my great-grandfather, who I knew virtually nothing about. They found a 36-page court case against him for illegally selling a bottle of Lipsky beer. It went on for several years. There's witness testimony. One of the best lines is, his name is Asher Girshev Kaplan. He lives on 2nd Hospitality Lane in the house of Yankel, the stove maker, whose surname he does not know. Kind of sounds like Fiddler on the Roof, and everybody chuckles, but it really brought my family to life in ways I never could have imagined. The other thing is his address, 2nd Hospitality Lane. In my search, when I found him, Catskill, the later Charles Kaplan, on the manifest of Ellis Island, he gave his father's name, which you see below, and his street address. The reason I bring it up, it confirms that the records I found on this side of the ocean match to the records found in Belarus, because we're often wondering, how do I know that's really my 6th grade grandfather? I know you found him, but it's not like they had driver's licenses. So this was great confirmation. Another piece of confirmation, they later found records from 1921 listing all these people's names in my family, also saying that my great uncle Isaac was in the Red Army twice, which nobody knew, along with Mariasha, my great aunt, owning a shop and supporting the whole family, because we found out from her granddaughter, she told us, to the best of her knowledge, Mariasha never worked a day in her life. Well, obviously that wasn't true. So confirmation is great. Another aspect, Asher Kaplan's wife was Hayafega Margolin. So she never came to the US, but I had her maiden name. What did that do for me? It allowed the Together plan to build another ancestral pathway with all these people. And then I could do something I call the backwards, sideways, and forwards. So I went back to the old country from what I knew. We found that ancestral pathway. And then what I did is I took a guess at who might have come to the US. And we put whether it's a masculine name or feminine name, because I don't know all the Russian names. And lo and behold, I'm going to have to speed up. We found somebody who came to the US, Burka. There's his father-in-law. There's his son's address. I was able to get all the way down to a living cousin of mine. What's important to know about that living cousin is she was listed on 23andMe, that's a long discussion, 424th. I would have never looked for her, but it turns out she was a 3rd cousin, 1 time removed. So I found that purely because of the Together plan. This was somebody else's search. They wanted to know, they had this address. They wanted to know, like, what's there anymore, because their family was there. We not only found and sent them photos, we actually had a blueprint. So with that, just a couple of testimonials, finding documents. Lee Dworkin, who is head of the Great Britain Jewish Genealogical Society, wrote a 3-part article for us. Stanley Goldberg said he had no idea he could go back to the 1700s like me. And with that, and the next 25 minutes, I'm going to hand over to Vasily, who is in Minsk.
Hello, everyone. Many thanks for joining the talk and supporting the Together plan. Carl, many thanks for this introduction and sharing your story of both being a client of the Together plan and being part of it as a caseworker. So my name is Vasily Zaitsev. I'm located in Belarus, in Minsk. And today my goal is to show you in details what we do here on the ground and what you can get as a client of the Together plan or customers. Now let's move on. First of all, I would like to share with you the life circle of each case we go ahead with. Everything starts with a web form that you submit on our official website, and we will provide a link at the end of the session in chat. After it, you'll be put on a waiting list. While you'll be on a waiting list, me and as a research team, we will check if this case goes under our responsibility, and the search should be done in Belarusian archives and not in Russian or Ukrainian or Polish ones. Currently, it could take about 3 or 4 months to be on the waiting list because we are limited in our capacities, but we always do our best to reduce this time because on one hand, we increase number of caseworkers like Carl, and also looking for new searching facilities, abilities in Belarus. While you'll be on the waiting list, you'll be always updated with the latest news of the Together plan by my colleague Jillian Guder. and so she'll be always in contact and show you that you are not forgotten. I would like to underline that to be on a waiting list to submit a web form, as many as you wish, to be in conversation with Together Plan is always and totally free. No payment is needed until we send our archivist physically to archives to do a searching process. So the searching process, so we split it into two phases, as Carl said you before, which we call phase one, initial scoping, and phase two, full all-around search, and details will be later. Next one. So briefly, once again, you submit a web form, then you'll be put on a waiting list. After it, you'll be assigned to one of our case workers that will be your point of contact till the very end. After a set of back and forth questions and some clarifications, the team of researchers will check archive library and respond if there is a feasibility to proceed with the phase one search, and you'll be provided with a respective quote, or there is nothing left, nothing preserved on the territory you're looking for, and unfortunately, neither us nor anyone else can do a search. Next one. So it is the web form itself where you provide it with your personal information and contact details. Next one. In the inquiry form, you put as details and vital information on the people you are looking for. First of all, these are names, surnames, approximate years of living, and place where they live. Also, you could provide us with information you know about their lifestyle, maybe occupation, address, when family migrated from Belarus. Also, there is a special field where you can attach any document you already have. It could be any searching results you get from online searches, or maybe downloaded from the JewishGen, or someone did for you in Belarus, or maybe you even have some original paper documents from your ancestors that they left for you. Next one. And yes, once again, submit in a web form with as much information as you have, and you can submit as many web forms as you wish, and it's always free. Next one. We always appreciate when our clients provide us family trees, even if it is a hand-drawn sketch, because it easily shows how people were related to each other. It basically shows a family composition. I know that lots of people use in modern world some applications or online services to create family trees and just provide in web forms links to this website. Unfortunately, we asked to make attachments instead, because unfortunately in Belarus, lots of them are not available. And for example, such well-known and common in genealogy world, ancestry.com is unfortunately doesn't work in Belarus domain. Next one. So here is a very, or almost the most important point I would like you to learn and always consider if you ever proceed with a search that refers to the territory and times of the Russian Empire. Because in that times, from a historical point of view, there was a special rule according to which all Jewish population had to live in a specific area, specific part of the Russian Empire that was called Pale of Settlement. And whole territory of modern Belarus was inside in frames of this Pale of Settlement. Within this Pale of Settlement, every Jewish resident had their own place of assignment to a specific Jewish community in specific settlement like shtetl or town. Why do you have to know this and why it is so important? The answer is simple, because a person in documents such as censuses and many others, people were recorded not according to the place where they lived physically, but according to the place where they lived, to the place where they were assigned to. So simply say, in modern words, if a person was assigned to Boston, but lived in New York for the whole life, you still have to check documents of the Boston Jewish community, not New York one. So it sounds easy, but in reality, it really sometimes makes us struggle because lots of people did not follow this rule strictly and either lived not in the place of the assignment or even outside payload settlement, which was not allowed. And there were lots of reasons, and mainly it was to avoid taxation for merchants and traders, to avoid being for military conscription, to be drafted for military service. It was so common for men, to avoid maybe criminal persecution, and many other reasons. Next one. So, as I told you before, it is so important to know a correct place of assignment of your ancestors. And this is one of the reasons why we split the search into phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 initial scoping is dedicated to prove that we are searching in the right place and for right people. After completing this phase, our team will estimate how many documents and what kind of documents are relevant for a search. I mean, that our period of time and territory where your ancestors lived respectively. After this phase, considering what the team has identified and what kind of documents and how many of them are stored in our archives, the team could estimate the feasibility of a full search and how many would be identified. Once again, it is just estimation, it's not a guarantee. However, I would like to underline that within both phases, phase 1 and phase 2, archivists physically go to archives and check this original paper documents. I don't want to set some special figures if we speak about financial aspect, but for phase 1, we have a basic fee of £300, but it could be adjusted considering how much we have to look for, and it will be explained a bit later. Phase 2, which we call a full all-around search, is really time and labor consuming process that could take about even half a year or sometimes even longer, when the team checks almost all available stored in Belarusian archive documents that are relevant for a search. And after it, you will be provided with the report that contains all extracted records translated into English from Russian and with soft copies, digital scans of all the original records. Phase 1 also will be provided with a report, but it differs from the phase 2. Next one, please. From the first sight, it seems that time frames are really big, and 2-3 months for phase 1 and even half a year or more for phase 2. But it could be easily explained because now we have such kind of a rule in Belarus, how often a person can go to archive and work with archive documents in a reading hall. Normally, a person can have one appointment per 1 week or even per 2 weeks. Within this appointment, you can either check five documents that contain less than 500 sheets, so from 1 to 500, or just 2 books that contain over than 500 sheets. So, for example, in case we have to check 10 censuses, and normally each census contains over than 1,000 sheets, we need 5 appointments to archive, which will take about 8-10 weeks. So now you can estimate how much does it take for each of the phases. Next one, please. As I told you before, we have some standard fees that could be adjusted. And it depends on a number of points. Mostly of them, first is the number of family lines we have to look for. So generally, it is just number of surnames you're looking. Second, it is places, how many places we have to check documents and how many settlements should be checked. And the last one is how many archives should be physically visited across Belarus. Next one. Why it depends on how many archives should be visited. So here you should understand how documents are stored in Belarus. So first criteria, how they're divided, if they were compiled before 1917 or after 1917. Because before 1917, before the revolution and the beginning of the USSR, documents stored just in two archives, in National Historical Archive of Belarus in Minsk, capital where I live, and in National Historical Archive of Belarus in Grodno, our big regional city with a really great and ancient history. It's easy to get documents from these archives because we have a team that lives either in Grodno or Minsk, and archivists go almost on weekly and daily basis to archive to check documents. Documents after 1917 are stored in almost 100 archives in big regional cities like Minsk, Grodno, Brest, or in small ones. So it means that we have sometimes to send our archivists on business trips, and it first of all decreases time frames, and of course it brings us some extra costs that should be covered, and that's why a fee should be adjusted to respect. Next one. So finally, we are at my favorite part of the presentation, and now I can show you what documents we work with that are stored in our archives and what information we can obtain for you from this document. For example, on this slide, I provided three cover pages of census list of various Jewish communities. Next one. First of all, every search begins with looking for civil records of synagogue. These are birth records, marriage records, divorces, and records of deceased persons. For example, on this slide, you can see civil records. These were spelled in both Russian and Hebrew. Normally, Hebrew just duplicates Russian text, with only difference that it refers to Jewish calendar. From these records, we can get information: who was born, who were their parents, where the person was born, and when. Next one. Here is another birth record, and it is interesting that often records on male children, on boys, contain information when a boy was circumcised, the name of a person that carried it out. Next one. Here is an example of scanned death record, which is also in Russian and in Hebrew. This record gives us such information as who deceased, when, where, and the cause of death. Next one. Census and family list. The research team value them a bit more than others because they call it sometimes a Klondike. Because in these documents, residents were recorded not by themselves only, but by family. A family normally consisted of the oldest male member and his descendants from generation to generation, with indication of their spouses, children, grandchildren, etc. So sometimes we can find a family that consists of 15 or 20 or even more members, and as you can estimate, it really gives us lots of further ways for further search. Next one. There were lots of censuses compiled in the Russian Empire, but it is important to mention that before 1804, it was not mandatory for Jewish residents to have a surname until a respective law was issued in 1804. So when we work documents that were compiled before this year, we have to operate to work with almost names only and patronyms, which is father's name, and it really makes a search more difficult and not so sometimes reliable. Next one. Names and alphabetical lists. In these ones, residents were recorded by their names and surnames, and usually only male members. Next one. One, please. IDs and passports. For example, on this slide, you can see a scan of a Polish passport. Why is it Polish? Because in the interwar period between Second and First World Wars, part of almost half of Belarus was in Poland. Next one. police department and court documents, court meetings are really, to be honest, this is my favorite one kind of documents. And on this slide, you can see a criminal case we found for Karl Kaplan on his ancestor Osher, who illegally traded and delivered beer in the streets on the streets of Minsk, where I currently live. So Karl was really excited with this case, and he asked us to scan and translate literally every word and every page of this book. Next one. Personal profiles. For example, this one also from Polish Times. These were provided for applications for visa and foreign passports, which contain lots of interesting information like addresses, when a person was born and where. There are some identifications, their outlook, appearance, etc. Next one. Military draft list. In the Russian Empire, almost all men were obliged to serve in the army. So this information, these documents contain lots of information, especially on male members of Jewish communities, but often they contain information not only on those who should be drafted, but on their entire family too. Except family composition, from these documents, we can also get information on a person's appearance, for example, height, weight, chest volume, foot size, eye and hair color, nose, chin, and face type. So really interesting, so you can make a photo of it. Next one. Information on owned properties, such as lists of real estate owners, lists of landlords, lists of householders, where you can get information such as what kind of house was owned, how many rooms or even apartments was there, what material was built from, if there was a stove or no, if there was maybe a barn, a shed, or a vegetable garden outside, and how much did it cost. Next one. Business information, financial information like bank accounts, business licenses, information on even the whole enterprises, how many workers were employed, what was the annual revenue, if there were any extra premises and machines. Next one. So I've please previous one. Sorry. Yeah, I've showed you just some examples of documents that are available in our archives. There are still some more and lots more, but what we should check for you, it's really individual and can discuss only with you. So now I'm going to show you some examples of reports we provide after a full search, after phase 2 of the search. Please move on. Every report starts with ancestral pathway. It is a flow chart where ancestors provided from generation to generation with their years of living, years were born, and their spouses. It differs from the family tree because family tree is one that grows. This one contains only those persons that were identified by our research team. So you can take this one and input to your one that grows. Next one. Synopsis of our findings, where we list the persons identified and provide some special features that could help you to navigate through the report. Next one. Section named documents checked, where we list every single document, every single book that was checked by our research team. On one hand, you can go through these documents and understand how many work was done, how many pages were manually checked by the research team, and sometimes it could be dozens of thousands or even more. On the other hand, we provide direct location of a document, like archive number, name of archive, fund number, etc. So if you ever in the future would like to make another search, there will be no need to check these documents again because everything was already extracted. Next one. So you can see, for example, that These are just 4 documents listed and over than 200 sheets, over than 300 sheets that should be checked in 4 documents. You will be provided with digital scan soft copies for every record that we were able to identify. If you wish, we can make paper scans for extra. Next one. So here you can see an example of the report itself. It is translated into English original record that is followed by a scan. As I understand, likely you don't read Russian, but if you find someone, they can prove that it is a right record and not fabricated. All these records, mostly of them, are in Old Russian, and it really differs from the language we speak currently in Belarus and Russia. And it contains lots of dead words that we never use again, and lots of people, especially youth, never heard them in their life. So we translated into modern English, but we tried to save it, let's say, old-fashioned style. So we use some terms, some words, but provide explanation. Please, next one. So here is another example of a page from the report. Next one. So I would like to say that as a Together plan, we're always transparent and honest. So if you would ask if we can guarantee a result, unfortunately not, because at the end of the day, it is a very specific field, very specific area when we work with this ancient document. And territory of Belarus went through tough and dark times of 2 consecutive world wars, communist regime, revolution, and lots of documents, they just disappeared, were destroyed, were burned. And so sometimes there are really big gaps between times when documents were issued. Also, lots of documents that are stored in our archives are damaged. I'll show you some examples. And when we find these documents, we cannot use record because it would be because the text would be illegible. Sometimes documents could be on restoration, and it terminates our searching process. But be sure we will wait until it will be brought back to the archive. We will check, and if something relevant for you is recorded there, we'll provide it for you without any extra payment. Then last but not the least is that Jewish residents, when immigrating, used to change their names dramatically. Normally, they just change it to more anglicized options like Moses for Moisha or Rosa for Rivka. But sometimes they used to change it dramatically when they immigrated without any passports, without documents, for reasons maybe for hiding from persecution or fake their age to be employed and any other reason. Next one. So here is an example of damaged documents. As you can see on the left side, seems some of our archivists spilled their coffee on this ancient page. I'm just kidding. And on the right, as you can see, on the left page, part of the document is missing. Next one. So since we are at the end of the session, and I just want to say that since autumn 2023, there are specific rules, how often you can get to the archive, how many documents you can check, and even some other rules. So if you wish to proceed with searches in Belarus, regardless if it would be Together Plan or any other independent organization, please just be sure and check if this organization has access to archives and can operate on a regular basis. So I guess that's all. Please, next one. Many thanks again for joining this talk. Many thanks to Avram Grol and the JewishGen organization for giving us this chance and this platform to talk to you. Now it's time for Q&A. I think, Deborah, you're muted.
We have got several questions. We've got a lot of questions, so let's see if we can get through them. So keep your answers succinct. So Michael Weinstein asks, would the Belarusian state records in Grodno have records from the border areas of Poland, such as Bielsk and Boki?
I guess it should be Botsky and Bielsk currently are in Poland, close to the border with Belarus. But as I remember, for some time they were in Grodno Gubernia as part of the Russian Empire. And for that period, it should be 19th century, documents likely should be in Grodno archive. It's not a rule, but it should be. It is like a rule for every settlement that is on the border between two countries. You never know exactly if it is in your country or another one, because especially territory of Belarus went from one country, like belonged either to Russia, to Poland, to Lithuanian Commonwealth in different time periods. So that's what we do even before we start the search. We investigate where documents are.
Good, thank you. Do you work south of the border in Ukraine? My mother's parents hail from Dombrovets and Berezne. I've identified family from David Gorodok to just south of Rivne.
I don't know about the first two settlements. I guess these are in Ukraine, close to the border with Belarus, but I don't know. But David Gorodok is currently in Belarus, and definitely documents on this settlement are stored in Belarusian archives. Definitely on David Gorodok.
Okay, thank you.
And we did a number of searches there already.
David Speiler, I believe, has asked, given the geopolitical changes in this region over the last 100 to 150 years, how do I know where to cast my search for my family? Poland, Lithuania, and Russia/Belarus have controlled my areas of interest.
So it is a bit similar to the first question, as I told you before. Territory of modern Belarus went from one country to another. And it is how to say, some investigation work that we do when you send us a web form. We check whether it is under our responsibility of Belarusian archives or not.
Okay.
But it is like a preliminary answer. So of course, phase one gives a full answer for this question.
Perfect. Rebecca Dunham has asked, I have ancestors who say they came from Bialystok. Could be the city itself or just the area nearby, but I haven't found any European records about them. Could you address whether there are records from Bialystok still held in Belarus, and are they extensive?
I know there is an archive in Bialystok too, because it's Poland, but some documents could be in Belarusian archives, because it once again was within Russian Empire.
Okay. Vasily, specifically a question for you. Are there any records for Kopatkovici, and also are there cemetery records as well?
Kopatkovici, let me check my database. So just to clarify, I'm not an archivist myself. I'm like a manager to manage the processes, to be a bridge between our archivists and caseworkers. Just to say from scratch, I'm not confident. So this one.
I mean, I would recommend that this is somebody
to submit a web form so we can
submit a web form and ask the question, and we'll come back to you. So it's with those very specific ones that send us your inquiry, and we'll come back to you. We have another one.
Okay, let's move on. Sorry.
Yeah, of the Eastern European countries abutting Belarus mentioned, Russia is absent. I have a grandfather from the far eastern part of Mogilev Gubernia that is in Russia. Are there ways to get at those records?
It depends where, what settlement it is. It could be as well in Russia as well in Belarus. But if it was in Mogilev Gubernia, but currently in Russia, documents still should be in Belarus.
Perfect. Okay. Ellen Weinstein, I have extensive information about my family after about 1870, but very little before except for a general location. What kinds of records might be available to help find earlier information?
It really depends, because on one place we can have lots of documents compiled before 1917 and almost nothing after, and vice versa. So whoever you are, please submit a web form, provide this information you have. We'll take a look and come back to you.
David Barnett says, are there records which would document whether or not a person was drafted into the Russian military and what that service might have been? We have a photo of two brothers in their uniforms who came to the United States and wonder what we can find out about their service.
So I cannot say what can we say looking at a photo. However, I have one really great historian in Minsk, but he more specializes in the Second World War and communist regime. But if you know their names, ages when they were born, possibly we could find documents of military service of the settlement and when they were drafted and to which department.
Okay. Do you search more than the archives in Minsk? In other words, do you use local information for small towns?
As I told before, if we speak about documents before 1917, only two archives should be engaged. If we speak about territory of Belarus, we also have really great specialists in Lithuania that do searches for us, covering almost all parts of Lithuania and partially Latvia. So if we speak about after 1917, as I told you before, yes, we can send archivists for a business trip, but it really takes time and increases costs.
Okay, I'm not sure we can answer this question. For Pinsk, why has JewishGen indexed the revision lists 1858 and earlier, but not the later family lists? I mean, I think that's a question to JewishGen, not to us.
Yeah, I'm not sure the answer to that, but they can email us and we could forward it to the project coordinator.
Okay, I just thought to be fair and transparent, I'd read it. It would be helpful if someone could undertake the scanning of archival documents in Belarus, like Alex Krakowski and his team have been doing in Ukraine, and have them available for access for a fee. That's a good question. Not so easy, hey?
Just to say briefly, it's depend not only on our facilities, but on the permission from governmental side, because all archives are on the managed on by the Ministry of Justice. So,
yeah. Okay, cost depends on number of surnames, but a successful search will presumably yield new surnames, daughters, married names, etc. Will those be searched too? Right now, I have only 2 Belarus names, but there must be many more.
So normally we said we look for one direct line that goes for them from vertically to horizontally, and we do not spread search to another family lines. It should be discussed individually, because sometimes if we look for next branches, it would be like unlimited search.
Yeah, it would be endless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you encountered stories of name changes and/or adoptions as a means of avoiding conscription? This is a story that's passed down from Brest and Kovel ancestors.
So we have really even captured stories when people fabricated their surnames and names and ages. So an only way to prove it to see the whole picture. If we see lots of family members and they match to each other, it's the only way to prove it. So, and also considering our experience currently, we really can understand how people used to change their names and what anglicized names do you take instead of Russian.
Thank you. How does the scope of How does the scope of 19th century vital records available in the archives compare with what has been indexed on the Litvak, SIG, JewishGen, etc.? Are there a great many Jewish vital records from the Belarus region that haven't yet even been indexed?
Because I'm not very common with the Litvak database, so I'm not sure that I'm really not really confident.
It's a difficult one to answer.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say that for Belarus, it's just such a limited percentage. I believe it's around, I've heard numbers like 10, only 10% have been digitized or indexed. So it's a significant amount of the Belarus records are only in the archives. It's just over history what was allowed by the archives and what wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. The amount of scanned documents is really low. Percentage is really low.
Were the records in the synagogues of Grodno that were also maintained in the state archives, or are there records in the synagogues of the synagogues of Grodno that were also maintained in the state archives? I haven't tried to do a search because I was under the impression that the records were destroyed by the Nazis.
Okay. So the answer is simple. Records are no more stored in synagogues, because unfortunately there are almost no more synagogues in Belarus, just few of them, and we really do great job with the help of the Together plan to preserve them. And currently all civil records of synagogues are stored in historical archives.
So it's possible something could be found.
Yeah, because it was available for synagogues to make civil records only before the revolution.
Can the search show that I have a grandparent who was issued a passport by Poland?
Sure, it could be, but not all of them used to obtain Polish citizenship. But there are many other options to see if they had a Polish residency. For example, if they traveled abroad, which could be indicated, and many others. Or when some people immigrated, they had to say that I'm not reducing my residentship. How to say it? Living in my residentship. Okay.
Yeah, relinquishing it.
Yeah.
Renouncing. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, renounce. Sorry.
That's all right.
Language, so sometimes. Sorry.
How did you develop this process and the tools for managing the workflow? Did you have to create this completely from scratch, or were there other organizations that you looked to as a model? Oh, I can answer that. We created it.
It's a really long process.
It's been a real work. It's been a real team effort, and a lot of good brains working on it. But yes, we did start it from scratch. And we're very proud of it, I have to say. Can we limit the extent of a search? I'm looking for the basics: date and place of birth, marriage, death, also information on direct relatives, but not addresses, photos, conscription, properties, etc.
Yeah, normally that's what we are looking for within the phase one. Yeah, but I'm not sure. Sometimes even phase one cannot, within phase one cannot check all the documents that could give this. So, yes, it could.
Somebody has written Buki is in Ukraine, not Belarus. I'm not quite sure why that's there, so it's not a question. How far separated might the place of registration be from the place of residence? How far?
Well, in my case, again, we always thought our family was from Minsk. They originally came from Uzda. And so the first thing I do is, hey, Google, how far away is that? It's about an hour and a half today's drive. I assume there could be bigger, but that's a substantial distance back then. So that's just my example.
Absolutely.
The other comments I would make about finding other branches, the reason I have two more ancestral pathways, my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandmother, is because we found the surnames in records in the United States. I don't believe those maiden names were ever mentioned in any records that were found. So you may or may not find a lot of other branches, because Vasily, correct me if I'm wrong, they just didn't mention the wife's maiden name that often.
Yeah, sure. That's right. We found lots of wives, but do not know their surnames, unfortunately. And that's why it really cuts further ways to go.
Yeah, it's very challenging. How do you deal with common names and first names could be a false result? There are a lot of unrelated families that have common names.
Sure, it could be so, and that's why we need as well as more information from you on your ancestors, and as more like points we can compare with each other, the bigger it gives us a possibility to say exactly your relatives.
For the 1897 census, I found one branch of my family who were in the Bialystok-Lomza area. Others I have found nothing. Was this census of the Russian Pale kept centrally, and might it be in Belarus?
1897.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a general census of the Russian Empire. Yeah, so I guess possibly yes.
Yeah, so again, that's something to submit on a web
Yeah,
form.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I know we're running out of time, and there are many questions. I'm not sure we're going to get to all of them. There's a couple I wanted to read out. The town of hold on. So yeah, so some of these were asking specifically about certain towns. I would say submit a web form, and we'll
You
be
can
able
just
to come
briefly
back to
go
you.
through the names of the settlements, and like I can say yes, no, if I remember, if we did a search.
So the town of Sopotskin belonged to the Augusto administrative district of Poland, but is now part of Belarus. My understanding is that no records exist in the Polish archives. Are there any records in Belarus?
Augustov was a region that partially was in Russian Empire for some time, so we have to take a look. You can just briefly go through the names of the places.
Okay.
Or even I can.
Yeah, you can look through them. My grandmother came from Pinsk to London in 1910. English documents gave 7 versions of her name, as she was illiterate, so the name written was by sound. How do you investigate widely different versions? For example, Sinovitz and Shiavitz are just 2 versions.
We always look not only for one specific name, but a set of let's say similar names that sound similar. And when archivists check documents, they look not only at surnames but at names too. So it's a really thorough job.
Okay. Are there any records of burials in the cemeteries?
Once again, please.
Are there any burial records for the Jewish cemeteries? I mean, I know, for example, in Brest there aren't. They were lost or destroyed.
Almost no.
No, it's very difficult.
Only desperate.
Okay. We have one. Forgive me. I have anecdotal evidence that my family may have been from Grodno in Belarus prior to migration to Galicia. Are there helpful indices to check? Time frame would have been late 1700s, mid 1800s.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, so that we can cover.
We have really good set of documents.
Okay. United States records tell us our ancestors came from Slonim. If you found them in the Belarusian records, would those identify the shtetl they lived in if they weren't in Slonim itself?
Yeah, Slonim
Yes.
is in Belarus. We have lots of documents on Slonim Jewish community, and often documents on Slonim. There was such administrative division as UES. It's like a region. So we often check documents not only on a big regional city, but on some nearby shtetls around too.
Is there any information about the routes our ancestors took to the United States?
Oh, it's really difficult because there were so many ways how people immigrated from where. So if you possibly know, Belarus have no like seashore, no access to any big water. So
yeah, it's really difficult.
yeah.
Are records from the town of Volozhin still findable given the destruction experienced during World War II?
Yeah, we have good documents, even some civil records of the Jewish community there.
Are there records of deaths that might have been due to pogrom-like events?
Not much. There could be some, but really not much, because a lot of the archived documents were saved by people. So, and usually people focused more on such books as like censuses, family lists, military draft lists were saved by government, civil records.
And are there records for Borisov?
Borisov, yeah. Great.
Okay. And there was a very nice comment that I need to go back up. Hold on. Yes, Karen Kay, who is, she said, could you please speak to the challenges of researching the fate of Jews in villages near and in Slutsk in particular? I'm a current client of the Together Plan and have already received findings that have been life-changing for me and for my family. Deepest thanks for all you do. So we're delighted that we were able to help you, Karen. And she said, please, could you speak to the challenges of researching the fate of the Jews in the villages near and in Slutsk in particular?
First of all, I would like to thank Karen for this really great testimonial. Many thanks. Unfortunately, I'm not the archivist who completed a search for you, so I'm not give a direct answer. But as I know, there is always like we have to struggle with gaps in periods when documents were issued. For example, one document was issued in 1805, for example, and the next one was issued in 1858. So we have a half-century gap. So even if you find someone, it's really tough to tie this person one to each other.
Okay, so I think on that high note of that lovely testimonial from Karen, I think we've more or less covered most of the questions.
I see a couple of places just briefly. Volkovysk, yes, we have documents on Volkovysk. Minsk, Ivanovo too. Yes, Kantorovich was a really common name in Belarus. We completed a couple of searches for this name. Kadina, I'm not sure. Chausty, yes, it was in Mogilov. We made a search. I'm not sure if it was successful or not, but Chausty, yes, with the documents. Mozyr, you also Mozyr or Mozyr in Russian too. Sure, we have really good set of documents on this town. On Sopotskin, we did already answered. So seems mostly answered.
That's it, I think. So I think I know that Miriam Weiner is here, and she's a good friend to the Together Plan, and she has an award-winning website, and she's been putting some comments in the chat, which is great. So she's a great source of information as well. So hello to Miriam, who's out there.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's
Thank you
it.
so much. Really appreciate this. Was very informative and it sounds like very helpful to the many people who are on. So thank you, each of you, for a wonderful presentation. Next week, we have two programs. One is going to be on Monday, April 7th at 2 p.m., given by Karen Franklin. The topic will be Anne Frank and her ancestors, a new approach to understanding her legacy. And then on Wednesday, we have a talk by Janice Sellers. Her topic is Bubby, Who Are You? Finding the Maiden Names in Your Family Tree. Links to register will be in the follow-up email that goes out, hopefully by tomorrow, which will include a recording. And I wish everybody a wonderful day. And thank you again to our speakers and wish everybody much success. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.